QR code at the end of the presentation, we'll be giving away Surface earbuds. So you just have to go to the link from the QR code on the presentation and you'll be entered to win those. And let's get started with myself, Tom Northrup. I'm a senior solution architect. I have 11 years specifically focused in Dynamics delivery. I have my certification in D365. I've been speaking at the summit and consider myself a platform evangelist with the other presenters today. I have a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary IT. So I came from, waiting tables, service industry, and then midlife switched to IT, went back to school and got this interdisciplinary IT, which really matched, what I like is fitting business with the technical piece and making them work together. So that's my sweet spot. And little history about me, I was a Navy photographer. It was a great job. Loved flying around and taking photos. But today, we're going to work on the Power Platform. A little bit about Dynamics Consultants Group, what we do. We're a global Microsoft partner-to-partner consulting firm. We have traditionally focused on helping partners excel and fill in the gaps where they're needed. We provide onshore, nearshore resources as needed. We do full stack development, implementation, and support. And we have offices. We are growing. Currently, California, Missouri, Texas, Belgrade, Hyderabad, and London coming soon. We're really excited about that one. So what are we going to talk about today? Today, we're going to talk about help me rescue my failing project, right? So you got missing deadlines, overruns and costs, changes to leadership. Maybe they fired the PM, changed out the PM, errors on imports, errors every corner you turn. These are all things that indicate your project is going down. And it's never too late, though, to save. So we got to think of the bright side. How do we make difficult decisions around the people, the processes, the systems we chose, the partners we chose? What do? How do we turn the ship around? How do we analyze what's wrong and address root issues? That's the point of this session, is we want to uncover some of these common problems that get overlooked when we focus too much on the technology and we don't take time to look at the people that are producing it. A lot of what we're going to cover today is common sense. It's just not commonly practiced. It's not real, I'm not expecting to blow anyone's mind today with some out-of-the-world solution to a failing project, but we want to elevate this conversation so that we can talk about it, and maybe the next project around, we can start implementing some of these things earlier on. So how does the customer think about a project? They think of it with a utility mindset. I'm going to put in this project and it's going to make my life better. Our business is going to run smoother because of this new software. People are going to be more efficient because of the new software. But what happens when that doesn't occur? When it's not as efficient? They get upset. It's not working the way they wanted it to be. And the reality is that it requires incredible support from the teams that are using the system to implement the system. So I see this on projects a lot, where we forget about the people who are going to use the system because we're so focused on the project delivery. And this is one of the things that we want to bring up and start addressing. Here's what projects actually look like. They have years of complex processes. They have multiple departments with different processes, multiple countries with different regulations, different types of businesses that you're trying to come under one brand. Maybe you're dealing with people with variety of backgrounds, some technical, some not. Many systems that need to integrate. Maybe there's legacy data that needs to be migrated. All complex IT and company security policies that need to be evaluated and assessed. And all of that before you even talk about changing the technology. So we talk about, the Power Platform could solve this particular problem. Well, what about the other ongoing issues of life at that business that are already already existing before you even implement the Power Platform or similar technology? What it breaks down to is the real problem is us. It's the people. the ones and zeros are going to be ones and zeros. Technology is going to turn on and use electricity to make logical decisions. But it's not going to make the right decision if we don't have the right people in place to build it. And so things that we come across with people is maybe there's years of experience within that one industry and they've always done things that way. You know, the good old saying, well, this is how we've always done it. That's like, as a solution architect, sometimes like a kiss of death when I hear that. I cringe a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's a new way we could look at something, you know? Other things that people bring to the table is different ways of doing something that they have to unlearn now. Maybe there's different personalities. Maybe there's different goals within the organization that people are driving to, and they're not aligned. Of course, there's egos. There's company politics, there's people jockeying for position, just trying to find out their way in the organization. It breaks down that people are complicated, but they are what will determine success of the project. If people don't use the system, it doesn't matter how beautiful it is, it's going to be considered a failure. And that's hard. We have to address that right away. And if we begin to not focus so much on the system and the technology, but focus more on the people, then we get to see adoption happen in a natural fashion. And natural user adoption is the end goal. And one of the ways we do this is that we begin the project trying to fully understand the dynamic of the people that are involved. So as part of this presentation, what we'll do is we'll step through things you can do in the beginning, things we can do during the project, and things we can do at the end of the project to improve the adoption. So before the project, what are we going to do? We're going to walk through 10 tips of user adoption to help you start planning the project long before you're ready to kick off. If we use the kickoff of the project as the starting point for planning, we're behind the 8 ball already. As an organization, if you're thinking on implementing a project that's going to change your customer relationship process, that's going to revolutionize your sales process, then the planning needs to occur way before you're starting to implement the technology. What are we really talking about? Number one, everything is change management. Change management doesn't need to be this mythical thing. We don't have to build it up to be something extremely complex. What we can really do is think of change management as, I have a process A. I need to get process A to be process A version 2. What needs to happen to get it from version 1 to version 2? And think of those steps along the way. Who needs insight? Who needs oversight? Who needs to, be a part of that change control? That way you provide some structure around the change that is going to disrupt the user's day-to-day life. So no matter how big or how small, you're always considering change management as part of the project, because that's really what we're doing when we're implementing. We're causing change. We should be bringing change to the organization. And put this into the project. Put hours around change control. Put hours around change management so that you don't wind up going over because you didn't anticipate, oh, well, we needed to do X, Y, and Z. We didn't think about the impact of changing the processes or even the time it takes to document. So we come across that frequently on projects. The business doesn't anticipate the time it takes to document the change from process in old system to process in the new system. One thing you can do, another is get excited about this. Think of an implementation as a new way to hit reset. Maybe the organization if you're implementing a new sales system or you're implementing a new customer service delivery or field service, whatever it is, right? If you're trying to implement a technology to improve your business, get excited about it. Throw a party. Make changes, realize that you are now going to be able to make changes otherwise not possible. The change is a good thing, and be excited about it. Things you can do is take photos of the meetings, take screenshots as early as you can of the system. Another one, it sounds corny, but is the bi-weekly or monthly newsletter. Create a newsletter so you can communicate regularly that change is coming and how you are handling that change while you're implementing the project decreases anxiety for people. Because as a user, when my day becomes disrupted, if I can no longer do my day-to-day, if my email is not working, I'm going to have a problem that day. And that causes anxiety. And that makes me not productive, right? And so we want to decrease anxiety to increase people's compliance to the change. And we do that through transparency. And a party is a fun way to be transparent, I think. Another idea is create swag, get mugs and mouse pads that label the fun name of your project, Part 3 is identifying leaders for the project. So sometimes we need to look in unexpected places for these leaders. They may be the troublemakers at the organization, right? Now, not troublemakers as in they're the ones skipping lunch. No, these are the ones that raise a question every time. These are the ones that have, 100 ideas, but 99 are bad. But that one good idea is the difference between an amazing project, and failure, right? So that's the concept here. Is we want to build a leadership structure. Is at the top of a project, you need this visionary. This visionary should be the one who has those 100 new ideas every day, and only 1 or 2 are really good. But the point is those 1 or 2 are really visionary. They're really valuable. They're insightful. They're innovative, right? If we get the visionary at the top, we need an integrator in the middle. Now, the integrator is an executor. This is a very task-focused, results-driven individual. They get energy off of execution of the visionary's idea. So the visionary is sort of casting the vision, making sure this system's going to improve X, Y, and Z, right? This system's going to do these things. The integrator is the one, how are we going to get this done, right? It's the most important role of the project. Most projects, unfortunately, are led by the visionary. And that causes problems because the visionary is focused on the vision, not the practical application. Did we lose my... All right, there we go. Still there. So sorry about that. My slides adjusted. So you have the integrator, and then under the integrator, you have sales, marketing, operations, and finance, or you have your departments. And you need to choose and select. You need to choose and select the different heads of those departments. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my presentation. There we go. So you choose the department heads to sort of run those pieces of the departments. Why does my presentation keep going away? Next is letting go. As a leader, once we put these people in place to run the project, we have to learn to let go of that. We have to learn to let me see if I can reshare, and I'll share the whole screen from current slide. There we go. So we call it letting go of the rope. So after you built a great team, you need to trust them and trust them to implement and do the things that are expected of them. Now, sometimes at leadership, we have a fear that people are not going to do things the way we want them done. Well, that's okay. That's why people are different. But we have to hold them accountable to our expectations and then counsel them one-on-one to guide them when they do make a mistake. But making a mistake is okay as long as, in my mind, what we do is we fail fast, right? So you want to hire quickly, fill those positions, but if things aren't working, then you got to step in and fire them quick, right? You got to move in and make the right decision to get the right people on the team. Especially now with citizen developers, now we have the code first developers who have been living in this structured world, and Power Platform has knocked down some fences, has kicked open some doors, and the citizen developers are in the room and they're here to stay. Well, let the citizen developer make their mistakes. Let them learn. Let them cut their teeth, so to say, on what's happening. Let go of the rope. You know, if I don't want to get into a tug of war, I don't pick up the rope, right? And so in a people, if we're talking about the people on a project and how they're managing, sometimes we need to let people learn on their own. Come on, next. So we set measurable and attainable goals. This is number 5. This is one thing that's important and will help us let go of the rope. We eliminate entry into, we determine what is it that we want the system to do. At the very beginning, before, right when we start the project, we need to determine what it is we want the system to do. Is it eliminate entry to 2 systems, reduce customer service clicks to log a ticket by 10 clicks? Get specific. Create one form to view everything about a customer. What are the things that we are going to do? Because at the end of the day, when you deliver the system, someone is bound to say, well, this is certainly more clicks than it took last time. Or now I have to look at 2 screens to get the same information I used to get off of one. We've all heard them, right? To avoid that, get the delivery in the beginning. Get the agreement in the beginning of what are we going to actually do. So at the end, when you are delivering, then you're just showing, hey, we've met the deliverables. Now, you may not like all of that, but here's how we're going to help you get used to it. Here's the changes that are coming. Here's our change control process, how we handle feedback, right? So during the project, some things are going to go right, some things are going to go wrong. It's that simple. What do we do when they go wrong? When we get into sprints and releases, designs, these meetings can start to become stressful. People are really passionate about what we do, and we care about the outcomes. And it can become easy to fall into traps where we start thinking, maybe the previous partner did us wrong. Maybe the person who had the job before me didn't document enough information and I don't know what to do. Maybe we chose the wrong vendor to implement this project. Maybe this software just can't do what we need it to do. In reality, partners are pretty good at what they do. Vendors are really good at what they do. The software can pretty much solve most of the business needs that are out there, if not all of them. It really is, the softwares have become really ubiquitous in the ability of handling business processes, as far as we're talking business applications, right? But it's probably us, really. Maybe I just don't know how to solve that problem with what I have. Maybe I've met the end of my rope. I need to recognize that faster. And when I can recognize that I reach the end of my capabilities, I can ask for help. And what the fancy project management people call it, they say collaboration. I say it's just asking for help. It's a matter of learning how to work together as a team, especially when things go wrong, especially when we're starting to slip and we feel like we're not holding on to what we needed to deliver. That's when it's a good time to start collaborating more. Number 7, don't be afraid of a war room. Every project needs a war room. We need a place to gather, to get all of our heads together in one spot and communicate clearly. Go on site. I know in the world of remote and the difficulties with the past year, of course, we haven't been able to go on site. But aside from a pandemic, we should be getting on site with the project team so that we see each other, that we can communicate and understand each other. There's aspects of building a project team together that are not all about technology and people, but that are some are just, I need to see you. I need to know that you actually care. And when I know you care, I'll listen to you tell me I'm wrong. And that's really hard. You got to get to a place where the project team can correct each other and challenge each other and say, I don't agree with you, but here's how we're going to work through this, right? We use these successfully as conference room pilots, is what we call them. So when we do a demo, we'll get the project team together in one room, and then we walk through the system with them and show them what we built all together so that the feedback comes back, one, as one unified feedback, but two, transparent. There's no split off. There's no division. There's no this group of the project thinks everything's fine and this group of the project thinks it's all garbage, right? You have transparency there when you get together in one room. Next is throw another party. Halfway through the project, you're getting ready to deliver. It's time to get the users excited that it's coming. You know, change is coming. well, throw the party to allow them to get excited about it, to let them have some input about it, to let them see, you know, demo what you can of the system. It's hard for people to be too critical of a party, right? When you're done, one thing we do not want to do is hand them the keys and walk away, right? Okay, we built you this system. Have a nice day. That isn't going to work. We have to have a plan post go live. We have to have something that sets up recurring touch points with the users. Use training videos to do recurring training. Use the training videos and release them in stages. Don't release all the training content at once. Release the initial content of what they need to do the initial piece, and then have a deeper dive content that you release a month later. You know, continue with the newsletter is extremely important. Some places start the newsletter when they go live. That's too late. But continue with the newsletter, communicating how change control is happening, because as a user, when I get into a new system and it doesn't do everything I want it to, I need to know someone is listening. I'm okay if you tell me it's broke and it's not working. That's fine. But if I don't know what's going on, that increases my anxiety, which decreases my compliance, which decreases my productivity. And all along, the leadership at top that is seeing the productivity go down, they're not concerned with the middle part about the anxiety that the user has. All they see is a system that failed. When in reality, the system delivered on what it was built for. It's the user who wasn't a part of the change process who has so much anxiety that they stopped using it. This is why adoption is so important. Another thing to do is we like to do is innovation labs. So we set up innovation labs, and in an innovation lab, what we allow is We allow some of those staunch critics of the system to come in and give their feedback, and we encourage them to innovate a solution with us. Oh, you don't like that it does A, B, and C? Well, help us make it better. Sometimes, as on the project team, when we're working with the users, sometimes really we just need to listen. And there's been many times on a project where I've had tough critics, but in reality, they just wanted someone to listen to them for a bit. And all I had to do was sit and be quiet, and then they felt better and moved on, you know? There's not always a fix for everything. So what happens when they don't use the system? So natural adoption is the best way. And what we've described so far is natural adoption, where the business has invested in communicating clearly what's happening and what the expectation of the users are going to be. But when things start beginning to fail, we move into this carrot stick model, where maybe what we need to do is provide a carrot, such as money or a swag for entries closed in a day, or letting people know that there's management has visibility into their work and that there's no duplicate reporting. You know, you're letting them know you don't have to tell the manager what you did today. The manager has a report in front of them. They see how many phone calls you made or whatever it is, right? So we try and give them a carrot. We try and motivate them to use the system. Another tool is the stick method. You can receive a write-up or trouble if you don't make calls 2 weeks in a row, if you're not a part of the solution, right? Another is if it doesn't exist in the system, Dynamics 365 is what we said here at the time. If it doesn't exist in the Power Platform, in the system we built, then it doesn't exist. You know, you can't have reports outside of the system. It's got to be in there. And then the other piece is running meetings from the system. So the Power Platform is implementing business applications, right? So the business day to day should be using the system day to day. So when you have a meeting, it shouldn't be pulling up a separate Excel spreadsheet. It should be pulling up the business application and looking at that. Running your meetings right from the real data really makes an impact. And these approaches, the carrot and stick, used to be the only way people would talk about adoption. But we're finding more and more is that individuals and organizations are becoming more open to other ways of adoption, right? There's got to be more to the user adoption. So why is getting the right answer so hard? So this is an interesting, trouble here. One says 3, one says 4. People are difficult. They're not always going to agree. Each person is unique, and different things are going to motivate people in different ways. But it's us as implementers that have to find a way to promote the behavior and the use of the system in a way that will motivate users to use it. We can't throw our hands up and say, well, this is just too hard. It's hard to integrate several APIs and dedupe your data and put it into one common data model and have a user interface sitting on top of that. That's hard. But we figured out how to do it. We do it on a regular basis. It's a matter of making it a priority that the people matter. Changing systems is hard. All change is hard. But if we don't acknowledge that individuals losing predictive nature of their work makes them uncomfortable, then we're really missing the point of what we're trying to do, right? For me, it's got to connect to purpose. I have to deliver a software, not because that's just what I do. I like making people's jobs easier. I like process improvement. I like looking at someone who's struggling, spending 30 minutes on one process, and after some development, we can get that down to 5, right? I just made their day better. That's what we do. We try and make that day better for people. And we have to focus on the people and be patient with them and motivate them as implementers, which really we're leaders of the change. We have to become advocates for change, really. And that's the key for me, is how I overcome when I want to throw my hands up in the air and the people are being people. I got to dig deeper and say, what's my purpose here? What am I making better? And that goes back to what we said in the beginning of the project, setting goals. Make one of the goals a purpose goal. Why are we doing this? Does it make lives better? Is it making our product better? Is our product improving our customers' lives? Those kind of things are important. So that's the key. Be patient, encourage each other, motivate individuals, and communicate with transparency. And you will find user adoption to be a natural occurrence and the outcome of a project. I know I've had an hour, but this is the QR screen. I'll leave it up. You want to snap it to go to enter to win the Surface earbuds. Let me see if I pull up if there were questions. I know this wasn't much of a technical discussion.
Hi, Tom. So, yeah,
yes,
some
sir.
feedback from your session. So, Chaga saying, hi, Tom, your presentation was refreshing with great ideas and smart thinking. You got me thinking, and I have learned something new today. Can listen to you all day. Greatly appreciate your effective methods and ideas. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Great to hear, Sugar. I hope it's helpful. That's the goal. I get tired of implementing projects and then seeing the system blamed for poor planning, right? It's just that simple.
Awesome. And some feedback there saying love it. Thank you. So whilst everyone's submitting their submitting the form for the prize, I would like to actually entertain this discussion in context to Power Apps and Power Platform. So you mentioned certain principles, and each one of them, it was ringing bells in my head as to how you'd actually do that with a Power App when it comes to collaboration, because that's exactly where it is, right? It's that transparency that you were referring to, where you have different levels of ownership and leadership within the organization that often causes problems. And so getting that layer of transparency early on the project, sharing the vision and making it more of a flat kind of structure, empowering people to be able to execute their ideas. That's exactly what we're doing, right? With Power Apps. Would you agree, Tom?
Right. That's exactly, we're doing that with technology. The Power Apps bring the ease of access and increase, the user interaction, right? So instead of there being a big leap to get into technology to building an app, now we've decreased that leap and it's a small step now. And we're sort of trying to do the same thing with user adoption, is that don't forget, while you're out there building these apps, to think ahead of how will my user use this system, or how will I communicate when I'm making changes to the system. So, and some of that I just thought of while you were talking is that, some of that could be automated through Flow, where as you add a connector or a functionality, or your ADO, your development lifecycle, your release notes could be automated and delivered to users, right? So it doesn't have to be cumbersome all the time.
Yes, and I think it's also, and I think many people on this call, in fact, what I'd love to do is use the last 20 minutes of this session for people to share their frustrations on their projects, right?
Right.
So please, 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 if you have an issue on a project where you've got a fantastic idea, but for whatever reason, it's not getting any traction, right? That's often a problem where you've got these talented people who are either Power Apps developers, or they want to deliver a fix or a solution, but they just can't because of those challenges that you've been talking about. And you've shared many approaches to addressing them. However, it'd be great for the people to also share their personal insight. So guys, if you've got any personal issues where you're saying, look, you want to make a change to a Power App, or you want to deploy something, but for some reason there are challenges, maybe Diane mentioned it herself, my end users were resistant to change. So there you have a scenario where Diane is mentioning her end users were resistant to change, right? So that's common where, they're using a legacy system for so many years, they get used to it, they get comfortable, and then along comes Power Apps where a lot of the processes have become a lot more automated, as you mentioned, Tom, where a lot of the old processes have now become automated using Power Apps. And so it is a bit different because there's a different app. So in that scenario where your end users are resistant to change, now using those same principles, Tom, that you talked about today, with Power Apps, would you be interested in kind of talking it through in context to Power Apps, for example, whereby you've got these groups of users who are resistant to change, moving over from, say, a legacy system, whether it's AS400 or SAP or whatever it could be, to using a Power App now where they simply can maintain all their manual tasks that were previously paper-based, for example. Now it's Power Apps, and they're just being very awkward and complaining. Put it in context, how would you see that play out?
I've been there where the users were completely obstinate, almost to a revolt against the change that the Power App was bringing, because we were changing at a rate that the company had never seen before. Because of Power Apps, the Power Platform's capabilities, we were implementing change at the organization faster than they'd ever seen before. As processes were being created, we were implementing them into the app and getting them out into production, in months' time, weeks actually, rather than months or a year. So what it comes down to is, one, I think there has to be a difficult conversation to identify that what someone may call this is my process really may just be a workaround because they never had the technology to do it right. And so sometimes we got to call it out and say, that's not a process that you have. You have a workaround because previous technology didn't do what you needed it to do. And now we have the tool to implement a process, a real process that you can follow, rather than using this 5-year-old workaround. So I think that's one thing is bringing up that difficult conversation of, is it really a process or is it just a workaround? And then two, letting the people know that they're being heard. So it's either a newsletter or it's some sort of communication that is showing we're getting these complaints and this is how we're handling them. Really takes off the pressure and the stress that, well, everything's broke or nothing's working, right? When we're real transparent about, we have this bug and it's fixed on this day, or we have this issue and we recognize it as a gap in the system, we'll solve for it during next month, whatever it is, right? I think the communication piece brings transparency, to help with that. And finally, is someone in leadership needs to get them on the bus or get them off the bus. Like someone's eventually got to put down the hammer and say, this is our path forward. We've invested as a company so much into this. This is our path forward. Start using it. You know, that carrot stick model, you know. But those are the pieces where I see it play out in the apps.
And Tripathi is saying, I think every end user is resistant to change. Mehdi saying, how to get your team out of the comfort zone. So he's asking how to get your team out the comfort zone. So Mehdi, I think I'm just following up from what Tom has mentioned about getting the team out the comfort zone. I guess it's more about getting the leadership to encourage, first of all, getting that communication, as Tom mentioned, is going to help. And I think one of the things that I like to employ is getting the users involved in using Power Apps, and even in the build process, where you can now build Power Apps and collaborated Power Apps through Teams. And so by using Dataverse for Teams, Power Apps for Teams allows that further collaboration that you previously had with the limitation where you only had one person who could create a Power App at a given time. So you can get like a citizen developer style like pair programming in some respect, where you can have business end users and more of the power users joined together, building their Power Apps together, versus it being done by a separate development team. How does that sound, Tom? Does that would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's getting them involved earlier on, and letting them, as Jerry shared, you build the ownership for the user when they feel like they have input. So sometimes, in development, we'll go heads down and just build this cool thing. But if we had shown it very early on to a user, they would have told us we were off, earlier on, and we would have saved time, right? So you save time on the project by getting people to see the system. I think that's the other nice thing, is that you can build an app and it can be half functioning and you can still demo it, is what I really like about it, is that it doesn't have to be fully baked out. I can get it in front of a user and just show them forms and views and different pages on the app, and they can tell me, no, that's not what we were thinking, or that's right on, and that helps with their buy-in.
And there is a question. Right. So one of the comments is that users have fear of losing their roles due to automation. I guess that's a common theme that's happening now, where a lot of people are afraid. In fact, I think everyone is afraid. Even developers are afraid, aren't they, Tom, of losing their jobs to automation?
Right. Well, and we're afraid we're losing them to citizens, right? So there's that. Development used to be our thing, and now it's being democratized, to where it's easily accessible, and that causes anxiety. But the what is causing that is lack of transparency of the true purpose of what the tool is going to do. So if we're transparent that we're putting this in to improve automation, not to get rid of y'all, but to help you work better, now the communication is different, right?
Yes, and I think there's another question. Brian mentioned one of the biggest issues in adoption we run into is the visual appeal of model apps. What adoption recommendations do you have for projects where the customer isn't as engaged with the out-of-the-box design of model apps?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's a great point. We come across that. I've been a part of projects where we've used AngularJS and other JavaScript libraries and redid the whole visual interface of the model-driven app. That was a year of my life of redoing that, and it was extremely painful, but the client got the end result that they wanted. So it's possible, but really it's a cost benefit analysis. And I have this conversation with clients when they're talking, well, model-driven app looks this clunky way. And I say, but really what we're trying to deliver is functionality. Now, looks are one thing, but if I can deliver the functionality under cost and under time because I use a model-driven app, does that meet your business needs? And sometimes that'll help them get buy-in. If you start weighing the benefits of, yes, it looks how it looks, but look how fast I can deliver a solution to you,
Yes, and another point to mention is that you mentioned about obviously building a very custom Angular, front end, and Microsoft obviously have got the alternative to that, right? Which is the Canvas apps, where we have got full control over the UI. And not only that, but we've also got the PCF framework as well, right? So we do have more options now. And also, the new Wave 1 update shows some really, really cool enhancements to the model-driven app framework now, which is now that they've changed the headers of model-driven apps. So you've now got more control over how the header objects are displayed, and so there's a lot more improvements now to model-driven apps, which gives customers even more choice when it comes to the layout, which they were previously may have thought, as you mentioned, Tom, a bit clunky. Now they've got a bit more control over those model-driven apps if they still don't want to go down the Canvas app route. So yeah, there's so much options now, isn't there, Tom? I mean, think about you've been involved for like over 11 years. Before, in those days, there weren't really that much options, but now we have so many.
Right. No, you're entirely right. I'm kicking myself for not thinking of the Canvas app option, right? It's really amazing that if they don't like the model driven, you can build all the functionality through the Canvas app, but once you start explaining that to an organization, the cost of and time needed, they really got to want that custom interface, right? But yeah, I mean, and besides the Canvas app, you have portals, and portals allow you a lot more customization. So sometimes you may have a model-driven app just for the back end and create a portal as your custom front interface for the whole system. And then you have full control. You can style it however you want.
True. Yeah, very true. Yes, is saying implement agile in project management and citizen development concepts. There will be great interactions within organizations and IT focus, more insecurity and other important tasks, while operation teams create what they want with or without IT support. Essentially, what I think Ayas is saying there is that the fear around losing jobs to automation isn't actually true. All that's going to happen is people's priorities will change and their focus will be more specific. Would you agree?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, in the implementing of the projects, there's very seldom, I don't think there's been any where it ended in a mass layoff. The fear was still there. People felt like, oh, you're automating the system and then there's going to be less for me to do. When in reality, again, we point out majority of what you're doing is a workaround because you didn't have a technology in place that enabled you to actually do what makes you the most productive, right? So salespeople, they're productive by talking to people, not putting data into the system. So if we make data entry into the system the lowest barrier, a real small barrier by designing a good system, then they get to spend more time talking to people. Not I get to hire less salespeople, right? So I think, again, it's communication of the real purpose of what you want to put in. I've seen Nahala, best way to get leadership aware of all the breaches and the benefits of implementing new strategies and technologies. My thing is just really, I'm big on the communication piece. If I can document the benefits or the risks that are associated with a current system, and then document where a new system would would improve or patch or fill in those gaps, then communicate that clearly to leadership. That really helps. And finding a way that you can document it on a regular basis, right? So if it's something big enough, like security concern, then maybe I in IT, I create a security newsletter. And that's how I get leadership's buy-in, right? Because I start communicating to them regularly, hey, we've had these many breaches due to this, or we have concerns about X, Y, and Z.
And then Chagar continues, sounds like Tom speaks about a paradigm shift which brings about more effective solutions through use of the Power Platform approach. Sometimes 1 out of 30 people only see the paradigm. Tom's approach on how to onboard his ideas, the user to a new system is great. Yes, as you have stated, communication is the key.
Yeah, it really is a paradigm shift. That's why us in the community are so excited, and having watched the Power Platform grow from its infancy to where it is today, and then Microsoft's backing of it and their commitment to advance it I couldn't be more excited. I mean, it is an exciting time to be in technology because we can open up more conversations. Now I can really talk about user adoption because with the Power Platform, I don't have to spend weeks designing deployment, right? I can spend weeks on user adoption now because my deployment structure in the Power Platform is really well managed. It's really controlled, so it frees me up to do something that I'm more passionate about.
Awesome. Okay. So I think we've come to the end. So people have been obviously submitting their the questionnaires or the forms for the prize. We also have some prize winners for the Power Apps functional books as well as the developer books. So I think some of the winners are Francis from Tech One Global is one of the winners. We have Camille Kubis. We have Canadian Medical Association. We have Kitty from the Canadian Medical Association, again, another winner. Yes, so they're the winners, again, of those books. I don't know if you will be sharing your winners immediately or will it be later, Tom?
Yeah, someone will contact them through the email. Sorry about that.
Got you. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you once again, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Do you have any final messages for the community?
No. Make sure you stay involved through the community site, and